The Fletcher-class was a class of destroyers built by the United States during World War II. The class was designed in 1939 as a result of dissatisfaction with the earlier destroyer leader types of the Porter and Somers classes. Some went on to serve during the Korean War and into the Vietnam War. The United States Navy commissioned 175 Fletcher-class destroyers between 1942 and 1944, more than any other destroyer class, and the design was generally regarded as highly successful. Fletchers had a design speed of 38 knots and an armament of 5.5 inches guns in single mounts with 10 21 inches torpedoes in 2 quintuple centerline mounts. The Allen M. Summer and Gearing classes were Fletcher derivatives. The long-range Fletcher-class ships performed every task asked of a destroyer, from anti-submarine warfare and anti-aircraft warfare to surface action. They could cover the vast distances required by fleet actions in the Pacific. In fact, they served almost exclusively in the Pacific theater of operations during World War II, during which they accounted for 29 Imperial Japanese Navy submarines sunk. In a massive effort, the Fletchers were built by shipyards across the United States, and after World War II ended, 11 were sold to countries they had been built to fight against: Italy, Germany, and Japan, as well as other navies, where they would go on to have even longer, distinguished careers. 3 have been preserved as museum ships in the US and 1 in Greece. Description: the Fletcher-class was the largest class of destroyer ordered, and was also one of the most successful and popular with the destroyermen themselves. Compared to earlier classes built for the Navy, they carried a significant increase in anti-aircraft weapons and other weaponry, which caused displacements to rise. The flush deck construction added structural strength, although it did make them rather cramped, as less space was available below decks compared with the raised forecastle design. The Fletcher-class was the first generation of destroyers designed after the series of naval treaties that had limited ship designs heretofore. The growth in the design was in part to answer a question that always dogged U.S. Navy designs, that being the long range required by operations in the Pacific Ocean, they were also to carry no less than 5.5-inch guns and 10 deck-mounted torpedo tubes on the centerline, allowing them to meet any foreign design on equal terms. Compared to earlier designs, the Fletchers were large, allowing them to eventually absorb the addition of two 40mm Bofors quadruple mount AA guns as well as 6 20mm alike on dual AA gun positions. This addition to the AA suite required the deletion of the forward quintuple torpedo mount, a change done under the 4th of April 1945 anti-kamikaze program. Fletchers were also much less top-heavy than previous classes, allowing them to take on additional equipment and weapons without major redesign. They were fortunate in catching American production at the right moment, becoming the destroyer design and only Fletcher-class derivatives. The Summer and Gearing classes would follow it. The first design inputs were in the fall of 1939 from questionnaires distributed around design bureaus and the Office of the Chief of Naval Operations. The design parameters were the armaments desired of the next destroyer. As such, the questions were of how many guns, torpedoes, and depth charges were seen as desirable. Also asked was at what point would the design grow large enough to become a torpedo target instead of a torpedo delivery system. The answer that came back was that 5.5-inch dual-purpose guns, 12 torpedoes, and 28 depth charges would be ideal, while a return to the 1,500-ton designs of the past was seen as undesirable. Speed requirements varied from 35 to 38 knots, and shortcomings in the earlier Sims class, which were top-heavy and needed lead ballast to correct it, caused the Fletcher design to be widened by 18 in of beam. As with other previous U.S. flush-deck destroyer designs, seagoing performance suffered. This was mitigated by deployment to the Pacific Ocean, which is relatively calm, to achieve 38 knots with a 500-ton increase in displacement. Shaft horsepower was increased from 50,000 to 60,000 compared to the previous Benson and Gleaves classes. The Fletchers featured air-encased boilers producing steam at 600 psi and 850 degrees Fahrenheit, with emergency diesel generators providing 80 kilowatts of electric power. Typically, Babcock and Amp Wilcox boilers and General Electric geared steam turbines were equipped, although other designs and manufacturers were probably used to maximize the rate of production. Armament. The main gun armament was 5 dual-purpose 5-inch, 38-caliber guns in single mounts, guided by a Mark Chapter 37 gunfire control system, including a Mk-12 fire control radar and a Mk-22 height finder linked by a Mark 1A fire control computer and stabilized by a Mk-6 8,500 revolutions per minute gyro. 10-21-in torpedo tubes were fitted in 2 quintuple centerline mounts, firing the Mark Chapter 15 torpedo. Initial designed anti-aircraft armament was a quadruple 1.175 caliber gun mount and 6 50 caliber machine guns. However, as the attack on Pearl Harbor had shown the need for increased light AA weapons, later ships were typically fitted with 2 twin 40mm Bofors mounts plus 7 single 20mm Lycon weapons. Anti-submarine armament was initially 2 depth charge racks at the stern, augmented by up to 6 key gun depth charge throwers as the war progressed. Throughout the course of World War II, the number of anti-aircraft weapons increased, typically resulting in 5 twin 40mm Bofors mounts plus 7 single 20mm Lycons by 1945. Due to the increasing threat from kamikaze attacks, 51 ships received further AA modifications beginning in 1945, replacing the forward torpedo tubes and midships 40mm twin Bofors with 2 quadruple 40mm for a total of 14 barrels, and the 7 20mm singles with 6 20mm twins. 3 were built with aircraft catapults, resulting in the deletion of the rear torpedo tube mount and 5-inch mount number 3. This alteration was not of success in service and was not repeated. These 3 destroyers were later converted to the normal Fletcher-class configuration. Service. 19 were lost during World War II, 6 more were damaged and not repaired. Post-war, the remainder were decommissioned and put into reserve. With the outbreak of the Korean War, many were returned to active duty. During this time 39 were refitted, reducing their overall main armament and the number of torpedo tubes to accommodate other weapons. A new head-throwing weapon called Weapon Alpha was installed in many of the ships. Others carried trainable hedgehogs. 18 ships were redesignated as escort destroyers optimized for anti-submarine warfare. These reverted to destroyer designation in 1962. Other navies. Many of the ships were sold to other navies during the mid-1950s, including Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Greece, Italy, Japan, Mexico, Peru, South Korea, Spain, Taiwan, Turkey, West Germany. 6. Any remaining were broken up in the 1970s. The last Fletcher in service, Bamquitla, left the Mexican Navy in 2001, meaning the total service life of the Fletchers stretched over almost 6 decades and into the 21st century. 4 ships have been preserved as museum ships, although only Kidd was never modernized and retains her World War II configuration. Us Cass and Young, in Boston, Massachusetts. Us the Sullivans, in Buffalo, New York. Us Kidd, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Advalos former Us Chariot in Palaio Faliero, Greece. Ships in class. See List of Fletcher-class destroyers.